When a man gets attached to you, he starts acting weird. Not good weird, not romantic weird. He pulls back. He gets quiet. He creates distance right when you thought things were going great. And here's what nobody tells you. That's not him losing interest. That's actually proof you got to him. But most women see him backing off and immediately think they did something wrong. You start texting more, trying harder, wondering what changed, when the real answer is simple. Nothing changed except how much you started to matter. And guys, they freak out when someone actually matters. Let's be real about something most people won't say out loud. Men don't handle feelings the same way women do. When a woman starts caring about someone, she moves closer. She wants more contact, more connection, more time together. That feels natural to her. But when a man starts actually caring, when he realizes you're not just fun or attractive, but someone who could change his whole life, he does the opposite. He needs space to think, space to process, space to figure out if he's ready for what's happening. And that's exactly where the confusion starts, because you're sitting there looking at his every text, counting the hours between his messages, wondering why he's not around as much as he was 2 weeks ago. And in your head, you're thinking he's backing off because he doesn't care anymore, when really he's backing off because he cares too much. He's backing off because this got serious for him. And serious feelings make men act in ways that look like the complete opposite of caring. Here's what's crazy about this. When a man is just casually seeing you, when you're just someone he enjoys spending time with, he's chill, he's steady, he texts when he wants, makes plans easy, everything's smooth because nothing's on the line. But the second he starts getting attached, the second his brain figures out that losing you would actually hurt, everything changes. He thinks twice about his texts, questions his words, wonders if he's moving too fast or saying too much. That easy vibe you felt before, it goes away. Not because he stopped caring, because he started caring way too much. This video isn't about letting men off the hook for messy behavior. It's about showing you the 5 specific things that happen when a man gets mentally attached so you can stop reading the signs wrong. Because right now you might be seeing attachment show up and thinking it's him losing interest. You might be watching him pull back and thinking you need to chase. When the truth is, if you knew what to look for, you'd see that every confusing thing he's doing is actually pointing to one thing. You got under his skin, and now he's trying to figure out what to do about it. So if you've ever been with a guy who seemed really into you and then suddenly got distant, if you've dealt with hot and cold behavior that made no sense, if you're confused right now about why someone who seems so interested is suddenly acting so weird, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you're going to understand male attachment in a way most women never do. And that understanding, that's what stops you from pushing away the exact men who are actually falling for you. Let's get into it. You know that gut feeling when something shifts, but you can't put your finger on what? When the energy changes and suddenly you're not sure where you stand anymore. That feeling isn't random. And it's not in your head. Something did change, but it's probably not what you think. Most women, when they feel a man pulling back, assume it means his feelings are fading, that he's getting bored, that someone else caught his attention, that you did something to turn him off. But here's what actually happens way more often than it. He talks about he's pulling back because his feelings are growing. And for a lot of men, growing feelings feel dangerous. Let me break this down. When a man starts getting attached to you, really attached, not just attracted, but attached, his whole system starts sending him warning signals. His brain starts asking questions like, is this going to mess up my life? Is she going to expect things from me I'm not ready for? What if I let myself fall and it doesn't work out? What if this changes everything? And those questions, they create fear, not fear of you, fear of what you represent. You represent the end of his single life, the end of keeping his options open, the end of not having to think about someone else's feelings every time he makes a choice. And even if he wants all of that eventually, the reality of it happening now can freak him out. Now let's talk about what actually happens inside a man's head when he starts getting attached, because this is where most women get lost. You're thinking about attachment the way you experience it. But his brain is working completely different. When you get attached, you want to be closer. You want to share more. You want to build connection. That's how attachment feels to you. But for most men, attachment feels like vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like weakness. And weakness feels like something he needs to protect himself from. So his first response when he realizes he's getting attached isn't to lean in. It's to test whether it's safe to lean in. And here's what that testing looks like. He starts watching how you react to things. He's paying attention to whether you're the type who's going to make his life easier or harder, whether you're going to respect his space or demand all his time, whether you're confident enough to handle him having a bad day, or if you're going to take everything personal. He's not doing this on purpose. He's not sitting there with a checklist. This is happening in the background of his mind while he is trying to figure out if he can trust you with the part of himself that's starting to care. Here's the first thing that happens when a man becomes mentally attached. He starts testing the relationship without telling you he's testing it. He pulls back a little to see what you'll do. He takes longer to text back to see if you'll panic. He's less available to see if you'll chase or give him space. This isn't some evil mind game he planned out. It's his way of figuring out if this is safe. If you're safe, if he can trust you with the fact that he's catching feelings. Because men don't just hand over their hearts and hope for the best. They test the waters first. And how you respond to that test, that tells him everything about whether he can actually let himself fall. Now, here's where women mess this up. You feel him pull back and you immediately try to fix it. You text more. You ask what's wrong. You try to get things back to how they were. And to you, that feels like the right move. You're showing him you care. You're trying to close the distance. But to him, that just proved his fear was right. You're chasing, which means you're already too attached, which means if he lets himself get attached too, you'll want more from him than he might be ready to give. So what does he do? He pulls back even more. Not because he doesn't like you, because you just showed him that his feelings have power over you. And that power feels like pressure. Let me give you a real example of what this looks like. Let's say you've been seeing a guy for a few weeks. Things are great. You're talking every day, seeing each other twice a week. Everything feels like it's building towards something. Then suddenly he goes quiet for 3 days. You panic. You send a text asking if everything's okay. Then another one saying you're just checking in. Then maybe one more trying to make plans. And in your mind, you're just being normal. You're just showing interest. But in his mind, he pulled back for 3 days and you sent 3 messages. That math doesn't add up to someone who's confident and secure. That adds up to someone who needs constant contact to feel okay. And that makes him nervous. Compare that to a different response. He goes quiet for 3 days, you notice. But you don't react. You stay busy with your own life. You don't sit around waiting for his text. When he does reach out, you're warm and normal. No guilt trips. No questions about where he's been. Just easy conversation, like nothing happened. That response tells him something completely different. It tells him you're not sitting around stressing about him. You're not going to make his need for space into a big drama. You're confident enough to let him have his moment without making it about you. And that confidence, that makes him feel safe to get closer. The second thing that happens when a man gets mentally attached is this. He starts talking about you differently to his friends. And I don't mean he's bragging about you or showing you off yet. I mean, he stops talking about you casually. When a guy is just dating someone for fun, he'll mention her easy, tell his boys about the date, share the funny stuff. But when he starts actually getting attached, he gets quiet about it. Because talking about you out loud makes it real. And making it real means his far irons might ask questions. Questions like, so is this serious? You thinking long-term, you falling for her? And he's not ready to answer those questions yet. Not because the answer is no, because the answer might be yes. And saying yes out loud feels like crossing a line he can't uncross. Here's what this looks like in real life. You might notice he's not posting about you on social media, not introducing you to his close friends yet, keeping you separate from the rest of his world. And to you, that feels like he's hiding you, like he's not serious or maybe embarrassed. But a lot of times it's the opposite. He's protecting what you two have from outside opinions and pressure. He's keeping it in a bubble because once other people know, once it's public, there's expectations. His boys will ask about you every time they see him. His family might want to meet you. His ex might find out and have feelings about it. All of that feels like pressure. And when a man is still figuring out his own feelings, he doesn't want outside pressure making him move faster or slower than he's ready for. Now, I'm not saying this is fair to you. I'm not saying you should be okay with being kept a secret for months. But I am saying that in the early stages of attachment, men need time to sort through what they're feeling before they bring the whole world into it. And if you push too hard for him to define things or introduce you to everyone right away, you're going to trigger that fear of pressure. You're going to make him feel like you're trying to lock him down before he's ready. And that feeling will make him run. The third thing that happens when a man gets mentally attached is he starts comparing you to his past. Not in a bad way, in a this feels different kind of way. He starts noticing that being with you doesn't feel like being with the other women he's dated. The conversations hit different. The way you make him feel hits different. The way he thinks about you hits different. And that difference, it messes with his head. Because if you're different, that means what he feels for you is different. And if what he feels is different, that means this could actually go somewhere. And going somewhere means risk. Risk of getting hurt, risk of it not working out, risk of losing something that actually matters. So what does he do with that fear? He starts looking for problems. Not because he wants to find them, because his brain is trying to protect him. He'll focus on small things that don't match perfectly. Differences in lifestyle or values or future plans. He'll blow tiny things out of proportion. He'll suddenly remember why his last relationship didn't work and wonder if those same issues will show up here. He'll notice things about you that aren't exactly what he pictured in his ideal partner and wonder if those things will become big deals later. This isn't him looking for a reason to leave. This is him trying to convince himself that it's safer to not get attached. Because if he can find a good reason why this won't work, he doesn't have to risk his heart finding out the hard way. But here's the thing, if he's doing all this mental work, if he's overthinking and comparing and looking for problems, it's because he's already attached. Men don't overthink women they don't care about. They just move on. When a guy can walk away easy, he does. But when he can't walk away easy, when the thought of losing you actually bothers him, that's when the overthinking starts. That's when he starts looking for logical reasons to justify the emotional chaos happening inside him. And that overthinking, as annoying as it is for you to deal with, is actually proof that you matter to him. Let me tell you what this actually looks like. You're hanging out and everything's great. Then he makes some comment about how you guys are really different in some random way. Maybe you like going out and he likes staying in. Maybe you want kids someday and he's not sure. Maybe you're close with your family and his family situation is complicated. And he brings it up not in a fighting way, but in a, I'm just noticing this kind of way. And you're sitting there thinking, why is he focused on this one small thing when everything else is going so well? Here's why. Because his feelings are getting stronger and his brain is trying to find reasons to pump the brakes. He's not trying to start a fight. He's trying to figure out if this difference is something he can live with long term, because now he's thinking long term, and thinking long term is scary. The fourth thing that happens when a man gets mentally attached is this. He starts acting possessive in weird little ways. And I don't mean jealous or controlling in a toxic way. I mean, you'll start noticing things. He'll ask about other guys in your life in a casual way that's not actually casual. He'll pay attention to who you're talking to or who's commenting on your photos. He'll make little comments about your plans that feel like he's checking where you'll be and who you'll be with. And this is coming from fear. Fear that if he's starting to feel this attached to you, maybe you're not feeling the same. Maybe someone else could come in and take his spot. Maybe he's more invested than you are. And that thought, that possibility of caring more than you do, it makes him watch for signs that you might be looking elsewhere. Here's what's important to understand about this. When a man doesn't care, he doesn't care who else is around you. He's not worried about other guys because you're not someone he's trying to keep. He's fine with whatever happens. But when he does care, when he's getting attached, suddenly every other man feels like a threat. Not because he doesn't trust you, because he doesn't trust that what you two have is solid enough yet for you to choose him over everyone else. He's still in that space where he's not sure if you're as into this as he's starting to be. And until he feels secure in that, he's going to be low-key checking, watching, paying attention to how you talk about other guys, how you respond to male attention, whether you're keeping your options open or closing the door on everyone else. And here's where this gets tricky for women, because you're sitting there thinking, we're not even official yet, and he's already acting jealous. That feels like a red flag. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's just a guy who's falling for you and doesn't know how to handle the vulnerability of that. The key is watching how he deals with it. Does he get controlling and tell you who you can talk to? Red flag. Or does he just ask questions and then trust your answers? That's different. That's just someone who's emotionally invested and trying to figure out where he stands. The fifth thing that happens, and this is the biggest one, is that he starts planning a future with you in his head, but won't say it out loud. He's thinking about what it would look like to actually be with you long term, where you'd live, how you'd fit into his life, what his family would think of you, what being in a serious relationship would mean for his goals and his freedom and his daily routine. He's running through scenarios in his mind, imagining what holidays would look like together, wondering if you'd move in eventually, thinking about whether you'd be the type to support his career or need him to change things. He's doing all of this silently because saying it out loud feels like commitment, and commitment feels permanent, and permanent feels scary. So instead of telling you any of this, he'll drop little hints. He'll make comments about the future that are vague but include you. He'll say things like, if we ever took a trip together, where would you want to go? Or I wonder what you'd think of my hometown. Or maybe someday we could try that restaurant you mentioned. He's testing how you respond to future talk without actually putting himself out there. He wants to know if you're thinking the same things without having to admit he's thinking them first. Because if he says, I'm thinking about a future with you and you're not on the same page, that's rejection. And rejection when you're already attached. That's exactly what he's been trying to avoid this whole time. Here's what this looks like in actual conversation. You're talking about something random, and he says, I think you'd really like my mom. She's into the same stuff you are. Or you mention wanting to travel somewhere, and he says, we should do that. Not someday when I have money, but we should do that. Like it's a given that you'll still be around when the time comes. These aren't big declarations. They're small windows into what he's thinking. And most women miss them because they're waiting for the big speech. The I want to be with you long-term moment. But that's not how men communicate this stuff early on. They hint, they imply, they leave breadcrumbs. And if you're paying attention, those breadcrumbs tell you everything. Now let's flip this, because understanding what happens when a man gets attached is only useful if you know what to do with that information. And here's what most women do wrong. They see these 5 things happening and they panic. They think pulling back means he's losing interest, so they chase. They think silence means he doesn't care, so they demand answers. They think distance means rejection, so they try to force closeness. And every single one of those responses pushes him further away. Not because you're doing something wrong, because you're confirming exactly what he was afraid of. That getting attached to you means losing his space and his freedom. So what do you actually do instead? You give him room to figure it out. Not because you're playing games or trying to manipulate him, because real attachment needs space to grow. When he pulls back, you don't chase, you match his energy, you stay busy with your own life, you stay focused on your own stuff, you show him through your actions that you're not sitting around waiting for him to decide how he feels. And here's what happens when you do that. He gets space to actually miss you, space to realize that pulling back didn't make his feelings go away. Space to see that you're not needy or clingy or trying to trap him into something. And that space, that's what lets him come back on his own. Not because you tricked him into it, because he realized by himself that being away from you feels worse than the fear of getting close to you. Another thing you do is stop trying to define everything right away. I know that's hard. I know you want to know where you stand and what this is and where it's going. But when a man is in that phase where he's getting attached but freaking out about it, the worst thing you can do is force him to put a label on it, because the label feels like pressure, and pressure makes men run. So instead, you let things develop naturally. You focus on how he treats you, not what he calls you. You pay attention to his actions, not his words, because a man who's getting attached will show you through what he does long before he's ready to say it out loud. You also need to stay outcome independent. And I know that sounds like some self-help talk, but here's what it actually means in real life. You stop making him the center of your happiness. You stop waiting for his text to feel good about your day. You stop basing your worth on whether he's being consistent or distant. You stay grounded in yourself, in your value, in your own life, in the fact that you're going to be fine either way. And that energy, that I'm good with or without you energy, that's what makes a man feel safe to actually attach. Because he's not worried that you'll fall apart if he's not perfect. He's not worried that your happiness depends entirely on him. He sees someone who's whole on their own. And that's the kind of person a man can actually let himself fall for without feeling like he's drowning. Here's the hard truth, though. Not every man who shows these 5 signs is going to end up choosing you. Some men will go through all of this, feel the attachment, recognize what's happening, and still decide they're not ready. And that's not about you or your worth or whether you did everything right. That's about where they are in their life. Some men aren't ready for what attachment requires. They're not ready to show up consistently, not ready to be vulnerable, not ready to build something real. And if that's the case, no amount of giving them space or being understanding or waiting patiently is going to change it. The only thing that changes a man's readiness is time and his own growth. And you can't sit around waiting for that to happen. So how do you know the difference? How do you know if you're dealing with a man who's getting attached and just needs time to process it versus a man who's getting attached but will never actually commit to you? You watch what happens after the pullback. Does he come back? Does he make an effort to reconnect? Does he start showing up more consistently, even if it takes him a minute to get there? Or does he just stay distant? Does the hot and cold become a pattern that goes on for months? Does he keep you in this confusing in-between space where you're not together but not together? Because real attachment, even when it's scary for him, moves forward eventually. It might move slow. It might have moments where he retreats, but it moves. If 3 months go by and he's still in the exact same place, still giving you the same excuses, still keeping you at the same distance, that's not attachment working itself out. That's just someone who likes the idea of you but isn't willing to do the actual work. Let's talk about what you actually deserve here, because I need you to really hear this. You deserve someone who doesn't just get attached to you in private while keeping you at arm's length in public. You deserve someone who feels the fear of attachment and works through it instead of letting that fear